I guess I'd like to start off by talking about the PPP and just how big of a deal this has been for a lot of small businesses. And I would imagine that there are quite a few of them who have gotten this money who think, well, I'm going to turn this into a forgivable loan, and it might be harder than what they were thinking. Can you all speak to that a little bit, just from what you know and what you've seen?
Sure, Jason. One of the things, or there are a couple of things I think that principles that businesses should have as they go into this period of trying to get the loan forgiven or applying in hopes of getting the loan forgiven on the other side. And the first one is to plan ahead. You're going to get money, and the day you get that money is going to start an 8-week clock that you're going to have to spend the money in. And so you're going to be the only person that knows that money came in, and you're going to be the only person that knows where that 8 weeks ends. You're going to have applied for this loan, if it makes sense, on a monthly average, and your forgiveness is going to be based on a weekly average. So this is the government, so of course we have a couple of inconsistencies in there. And so is my weekly average going to be enough to cover what I had planned on in a monthly average format, or am I going to have to accelerate a payroll or do something to try to make sure that my 8-week average actually reflects what happened? That's only going to happen if you plan ahead, if you've got that, and you have an open communication with your accountant to make sure you're gathering the right expenses and updating the schedules accordingly.
Do you think most accountants are prepared for this right now? Because it seems like so many businesses have been taking advantage of this. Do accountants have the bandwidth to go through these minute details with each company that's doing this?
One of the things I think is really scary about the process is that I think a lot of people think that we've got it wired or we got it covered, and it's, that once we're involved with the process, but there really isn't anything in place that would notify me I've got an 8-week calendar starting for this particular business today. Even if I get an email from them that says, hey, I just found out I got the loan funded. I don't know if that meant I just found out today that it got funded a week ago, or I just found out today that it got funded 10 minutes ago. So I still don't know the details of it. And if it's just in an email, I probably don't have any way of kind of getting back and referencing that in with an amount and things like that. So I think some people are assuming it. And another thing that I'm afraid a lot of people are thinking is if you're in the second round of funding, the 8 weeks is going to end at the end of June, beginning of July. And if you remember, they moved the tax filing deadline to July 15th. And what I know a lot of accountants are experiencing out there is it was like tax season just got blown off and a lot of people didn't send anything in. So if you're assuming that your accountant's going to be ready to jump right in, as well as take care of all the extensions and things like that, if he doesn't have the data available, you're making a bad assumption.
Well, that could be a real crunch. I have also seen a suggestion that you put this funding, if you get this PPP funding, that you stick it in a separate bank account so that it is much easier to keep track of. Is that something that you all have noticed as well?
I think the problem with it becomes that there are a lot of exceptions for what happens in it, exceptions for payroll that's over $100,000. So how do I make sure that only the payroll that's under $100,000 comes out of this account? Or if I fund payroll through a payroll service, I'm going to have one big draft of it that is not going to be all of it. I've heard a lot of people describe it, but if you've started the process and you haven't done it, I don't know that it's worth all the maneuvering that it would take to get the payroll drawn out of 2 different accounts and to draw checks out of those accounts and things like that. It makes a lot of sense on the surface, but it's just another change you're throwing into the loop when we know there are going to be a lot of changes in this.
So that piece of advice that I've seen might actually complicate matters for you a little bit. Are there any other red flags for people who've gotten this money? Obviously, it's a huge lifeline, but is there anything else that people should be looking out for as they round the bend here and head toward trying to get this forgiven?
Well, the first thing I would say, if we're talking about forgiven, then again, expect change and expect challenges. This is a government program that we are fairly sure is going to come back with some level of oversight. So as you're gathering these documents together, don't put everything behind the document, but have everything ready to support readily. This was a legitimate expense. It existed. It meets all of the timeframes. You paid it on time. Have all of that together in one place, so that if something gets challenged, you can easily answer and get them back what they need. And also expect change. This thing already looks way different than what I thought I saw on that Friday afternoon when it got announced. And things have changed. I've heard things that get added, that don't get added. And if I were to be real specific about something today, tomorrow that could change. So expect change, expect challenges, and be flexible.
And maybe don't require or count on your CPA to be doing everything here. There's a lot of reading, I suppose, that a small business owner is going to need to do as well to keep up with all of this.
Well, I don't know that it's what I think it's fair to say. Don't expect your CPA to help. I think it is, don't expect this to be business as normal with a CPA. Don't expect to just unload this stuff on him. If you're not keeping up with it currently, if you haven't accounted for it, if you're on QuickBooks Online, if you haven't recorded that deposit yet on the day it came in because you didn't know what to do with it, then he's got no way to quickly go and check things. So just be ready, be current, keep everything up to date, and keep him in communication. Don't over email him. A lot of CPAs will shoot me if they hear that I'm saying send them 100 emails, but keep them in the loop.
Okay, so you definitely want to get attention, but don't be a pest either, because there's lots of businesses going through this, obviously. Let's talk about those businesses that haven't yet gotten in on this funding. First round is already long gone. Second round has been dwindling. If and when there could be another round of this down the road, is there something I need to be doing, or are there several things I need to be doing as a small business owner right now, just in case more funding hits, so that I'm not behind the curve again like I may have been in rounds 1 and 2?
Well, I would say the first thing is be ready. If you haven't already got an application submitted, submit it as assuming that they're going to ask for the same information again. Don't wait, don't delay. If something was wrong with the other one, fix that and get it resubmitted as quickly as possible. And the other thing I'd say is keep it simple. If the bank says, give me these 8 documents, give them those 8 documents. Don't give them long explanations on why you gave them 9 documents. Don't give them hundreds of pages. Don't give them anything extra to look at. Be as simple as possible. Have the answer right there on top so it's easily seen where you can come up with a calculation and everything is supported, and don't have it anything that's unusual. Don't make it stick out. Just include it in the workflow, and if it's something that's wrong, we can always come back and address it and pay the loan back or something like that along the line. And most importantly, I would say this, be nice, right? I mean, your bank is dealing with a ton of applications, the SBA, and this has thrown every control they've got into a complete chaos. And so expecting them to automatically get this thing, or living in expectations that this is going to be something they should handle easily, is just going to make it frustrating. So be nice, be thankful, be grateful. Even if you don't get great news, it's not going to be the person on the other end of that phone call or email that's going to be completely responsible for it. Let's get through this all together.
It seems like there was such a derby in getting there to get the funding, especially the first time around for this. The second time was, no cakewalk either. So in that rush to do that, I want to loop back to one of the first things that you said, and that is that you have this window in which to spend this money. So people filled out all the paperwork, made their request, and did that. Do you think that a lot of businesses are going to have trouble spending that money by the time they have to, for the things that they're supposed to spend it on?
Absolutely. There's that whole idea of 8 weeks to prove, technically there's 56 days in 8 weeks and there's 61 days in 2 months. You're going to have 5 days that may miss a rent payment that gets in there. You may miss an entire payroll. I know that there are plenty of businesses in this next round that are going to miss that payroll, and you're going to have to do something that addresses it. The average for a weekly payroll over $100,000 is less than a monthly payroll over $100,000. So you may not get as much to cover it. So there's going to be, just in the nuances of how things are calculated, that's going to make it difficult to get all the way in there. So that's why you want to plan ahead to see where you're short and see if there's something you can do to mitigate some of that.
You don't want to find out that mistake in the last week.
Absolutely not.
I want to switch now to the technology that you all created, and how it really just kind of came along at this time that actually fits perfectly with. Talk a little bit about the product that you all have created and what it does.
Yeah, Jason, great question. And I'll go ahead and introduce myself. My name is Kaitlyn Kirkhart. I'm Chief Communications Officer of BaCoTech. But before joining BaCoTech, I was in communications at the public accounting firm that this is originally birthed out of. So as the tax deadlines would approach, we would get emails and mail deliveries, as well as phone calls and even text messages with things such as PDFs or spreadsheets or schedules or documents or photographs of documents or questions or answers to questions and various demands. So at points in the past, Ford would have as many as 400 emails in his inbox in one day. So
Jeez.
you obviously can't process and update tax returns for that much information. And it's extremely difficult to realize that one of those emails has a lot of different attachments in different formats. So integrating just the business data into a business return with everything else made that incredibly impossible. So that's where BaCoTech comes in. It eliminates that for business returns by delivering everything in one place automatically in a consistent format to integrate directly into a CPA firm's workflow.
So people who haven't heard of this before, does this, it's something that's sort of with you throughout the year, basically. It's sort of like your QuickBooks that's on your computer. And as you're going in real time, it's putting aside this information, and then it wraps it up and puts a nice pretty bow on it to send to the CPA when it's time.
Exactly. Yeah. So to kind of jump off what Kaitlyn was saying there, and to your point, for myself, my name is Will Baker, by the way. But for myself, prior to working here at BaCoTech, I was a small business owner, an independent contractor. And for myself, I was never concerned with filing deadlines. I was never concerned with tax deadlines. I was concerned with what I was doing. I was working, I was running my business. I was trying to maintain profitability. And I never really had an idea of what exactly I needed to gather for my CPA, which happened to be Ford. And so when I was, his client, I just get pinged by emails. Hey, we need this. And I don't know what that is. I don't know the difference between a balance sheet and a trial balance. That's just not something that was in my vernacular with what I did as a business guy. I worked in marketing and sales and web stuff. And so there was this whole degree to which I didn't know what I didn't know. And it ended up with frustrated communication gaps. And so what BaCoTech does is it gathers all that information. It just gives it to the CPA. So the business owner doesn't have to do that data gathering anymore. And that not only does that, but it eliminates the frustrations that business owners feel. Business owners get really frustrated by surprises. I owe how much? And I found out on April 14th, like, that's frustrating. All you're working on is a guesstimate until you know how much you actually owe. And so it eliminates that as well, because we're able to provide them with a projected taxable income and say, hey, this is a really realistic expectation of what you're going to owe. And here's how the decisions that you're making are affecting that.
It's interesting that you bring up the word surprises there too, because obviously anytime you're in business, surprises are never good. And Ford, you and I talked a little bit about this, and you say that, surprises are one thing, but there's always going to be a surprise. There's one every tax season. There's one big one every year. It just so happens that this year, it's a pretty terrible one, and that's COVID-19 and all that comes with that. But there's always going to be this kind of disruption that goes on when you're a business owner.
And that's, I think, one of the things that our technology does that is exciting, that's innovative. 2 years ago, it was the Trump Act. And so every business potentially had a 20% deduction of their profit, which became this kind of weird calculation. Every CPA understands this, no matter if they're big companies, small companies. We do all of our clients exactly the same way we did that client the previous year. But if we have 100 clients, that could mean we have 100 different procedures that we do. This guy sends his in this way, and he does this, and he never understands. All of those things that we have to kind of build in. Taking all of those different formats, all of that different information, and all those different workflows, and inserting a deduction or inserting a trailing 12 average for PPP, all of those type of things into our workflow real time is impossible when you have to insert that into 100 different workflows. What this does is it creates a standard workflow that's updated, not just a bow on it when the CPA needs it. It brings it in real time every night. It identifies things that we can do during the year to get ready for the end of the year, update fixed assets, answer questions that clients have inside their software, things that they leave in suspense or clearing or ask my accountant, things like that. We can identify those the day after they happen instead of the year after they happen.
Mm-hmm.
We can bring that in real time. I think a lot of my clients kind of laugh at the idea of not finding out at the last minute that they're going to owe tax, because we didn't have this platform as we were building it last year. So there were plenty of people that were like, hey, what about me? I wish this happened. I mean, it's working now. It's up, it's going, we're functional, but this is a brand new technology we're really excited about because we saw how it worked with this crisis.
Go ahead.
Go ahead. I was going to say,
I was just going to say,
short,
as a non-business owner, I'm surprised that this wasn't available before now. I would have thought that there would have been, 10 products that did this.
Well, and so the thing about it is there's a point where our industry kind of got flipped on its ear, and clients began giving us balances at the end of the year. That was the answer. And if we had to make adjustments, we sent them back transactions. So we sent them something they didn't know what to do with, and they sent us something they didn't know how to create. What we've done is we've created a platform that gives us a living trial balance throughout the year. And so if individual things happen, we can dig in and see the details underneath it. We have access to the transactions underneath it, but we don't have to have every bit of that. But we have a trial balance. We have balances that we work on during the year that are real time. And if I make an adjustment during the year, I don't have to worry about that not being relevant and remembering to do it again when the data comes in. I'm able to do it one time in the workflow real time. And that's just a totally different issue. And as to your point, why this doesn't exist, I would say why it hasn't happened hundreds of times, probably two real good reasons. The first reason is that we spend so much of our time looking at last year. You had to sort of have this square peg in a round hole. That was me, that was willing to do it at the same time I was playing with this idea that this could work, and impacting the other folks that were maybe working with me because I was taking a little longer to get something reviewed, playing with sort of this concept. That's a hard part. And we really do have to spend so much of our time looking at last year. It's hard to even look at at this year, let alone what we could be doing better, because by the time it gets here, it's the next deadline again. And the second thing is,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Probably because the second reason is I'm probably the first Aggie to try.
You had to get that in there, didn't you?
Yes.
The Longhorns all just stopped listening. So let me ask you this. So does this come in particularly handy now? I mean, it seems like it just sort of dovetails with what's going on with the, COVID-19 and with PPP, and, taxes may never be harder for some of these small business owners. Does this kind of dovetail and become more useful than it would have been in previous years?
Well, we know from working with our clients are really on top of their books, what things that or their records are on top of their business, what things all businesses should be there. So we want to give those tools to every business owner. One of the things that the guys are on top of it, that we know you have to be on top of it, is an average of the last 12 months of every expense category that you've got. So when they asked for a trailing 12 at February 29th, 2020, in the past, I'd be real lucky to have December 31st, 2019 information. To say I've already got February 29th in there, well, that would be for 2 months, and I'd have to back out there. I already had the average for the 12 months ending February 29, 2020 calculated, not because I knew the coronavirus was there, but because that's good information. The SBA picked that information out of the bucket to say, this is how much, this is when we're going to look at it, because that trailing 12 is something that we should be using, but it's not available in QuickBooks. It's not out there anywhere else. But that idea of the flexibility, now I can see I need a platform that my clients can log in and can look at real time. What do I look like over this next 8-week period? How's my spending going? And then I need to be able to create something where I can maybe see everything at the same time, and I can find out who is in trouble and who isn't. We've had it far easier, rather than mining through all this and coming up with an Excel spreadsheet or a smart sheet, to just pull off one of the developers from the next phase and say, okay, we need this report. And so our lead developer has finished up over the weekend, sort of a 8-week projection of where the expenses are, and create a little interview form. And our clients will be able to log in the next day or two and see exactly where they stand on their expenses. And I'm hoping, it's a lot to ask in a short period of time, but I'm hoping that I can create a dashboard where I can see what's out there or the folks in the CPA firm can see what's out there. But just having one login to get into all of your clients' data will make a huge difference for everybody. And that's the thing. I was processing loans from my laptop computer on my without Excel or anything like that. I was working with clients with just Google Chrome open, and that was it. Nothing, no prior software, no accounting software, no email, nothing like that. Just one platform. I was able to move through 11 different entities in a couple of hours to get the applications completed.
So I know that there are going to be small businesses out there that say, okay, well, is this in a box where I can go buy it somewhere? And then my question is, are there big companies out there that are interested in this sort of thing who are, going to be, banging your door down with a big pot of money in their hands to try to get their hands on this to make that box out there where somebody can just go get it?
From your lips to God's ears. It hasn't happened yet.
Yeah.
But
we're at a point, where if a business owner is truly like, I need this service, I want it, then we would say go to BaCo Group. BaCo Group is a local CPA firm here in Dallas, Texas, and this is the service that they provide their clients. And so they are actively taking clients, and we like them because we work with them, and they're great people. In terms of what it looks like for this technology to grow outside of BaCo Group, we are in the beginning phases of onboarding other CPA firms. And so if you're a CPA firm looking at this interview and hearing this and going, how do I do this? We're onboarding clients. We recognize that there are a lot of steps into really kind of automating a workflow like we're doing. And so that this initial phase of onboarding for CPA firms, we are hoping to have them onboarded at the beginning of Q4 this year, so that they're able to start working. They're able to start working in the workflow and getting stuff done like this. But ultimately, we're able to, through BaCo Group, get business owners plugged in, and we ourselves are able to get CPA firms plugged in as well. And if you're a big company out there and you want to buy it, you can just send us an email and we'll start talking.
My last question today, we have about less than a minute here left. PPP, again, a lot of people have described this as a lifeline. It's gotten a lot of criticism as well for the way that it has been set up. Just from your experience and from what you all have seen and the companies you all have helped with this, do you think that this is going to be a critical solution when we look back at this time? Will it have been a critical solution, or will it have been fairly flawed? What are your thoughts?
I would just congratulate people for thinking outside the box and getting something funded really quickly. To start trying to say, I want to second guess what happened, or would there be a better way of doing it? It's all counterproductive. This is what we're in for. Let's see it through. As Americans, as citizens, let's all be on the same side in this. And if you get too much money back and you don't need it, let's send it back. Let's do the right things with things. Let's be proactive, but let's encourage each other through this, and do the things that we need to do to build this, to build it back, instead of second guessing, or I would have done this, because hindsight's always 20/20. We just don't have hindsight, in the middle of this virus, when half the world was saying we're overreacting, the other half of the world was saying we're underreacting. Just deal with it and move forward.
And there's probably a good chance that, just from what you've seen personally and working with some of these companies, that it probably has saved quite a few of them.
Oh, absolutely. We have clients that have not been impacted as much as others, but if you can imagine, I've got more than one client in the travel business or in the event industry that is, there's likely not an event that has more than 10 people that's going to occur during the year. And if your entire revenue stream is built on gathering hundreds or thousands of people and managing that event, you've lost revenues for a year. Your whole life may have been built around, this is what I want to do. And that's tough. Now, BaCoTech is what I want to do. And now I'm getting a little choked up thinking about that, but it's tough. These guys, they did phenomenal jobs at what they were doing. And so my heart breaks for those folks, and that's where, as a group, we all ought to be together on this, and we ought to be fighting together to get past this. It's just a tiny little bug that some of us may get sick with, and sadly, some of us may not survive. But those of us that do, we ought to be on the same team.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I understand you getting choked up there. Small businesses, I mean, you give birth to them, they're your baby, and you do your best to take care of them, and it's hard in a time like this.
Every
Will,
time I've
oh, go
ever
ahead.
hired somebody, every time I've ever hired somebody, the first thing in my mind was, can I afford another mortgage? And there's a family out there that's depending on me to make the payroll for the next couple of years. And there's going to be a mortgage company that issues a loan off of my W-2 and things like that. So there's a big responsibility as a business owner we have that's a lot more than just birthing this baby, but the people that work with us and work for us, we're taking care of all of them. And it's tough to go through this.
That's great to hear. I think that a lot of people think that so many businesses just look at the bottom line. It's great to hear that you're thinking about the people involved there.
Yeah.
Will and Ford and Kaitlyn, thank you all for taking the time to do this. Really appreciate it.
Of
You
course.
bet.
Yeah.
All the
Sure.
best.
Thank you so much.